So Claire, you know, here we are months on since the expansion was introduced last August. Have you noticed an impact?
Massively, for a lot of people. So businesses, obviously in Biggin Hill, there's only a handful of shops on the high street. 11 or 12, most of them are independently run, so family businesses, and a couple of them are already now closing. One has already closed. Obviously COVID had an impact, but then ULEZ was almost the nail in the coffin. So it's not going to be long, probably, before our high street dies out. A lot of the empty shop fronts now are being taken over by just window front businesses. So, window companies, carpet companies. It's just a shop front, like an office now. So we're actually losing our high street for amenities like what we have here in Oxted. There's a lot of shops.
This was obviously expanded to improve air quality, which really is a priority.
I would say that's a lie. I would say that the data that came out of the Imperial College was manipulated. Our air quality in the outer boroughs, and I'm going to say all outer boroughs, but especially where we are, because we are in the countryside, has always been very good, index of 2, and it still is an index of 2. So our air quality wasn't bad in the first place, and it hasn't changed subsequently. But also, why has the data not been released yet? We're 8-9 months down the line. They believe that a huge proportion of non-compliant cars are now off the vehicle. I would beg to differ. I know many people in just my area of non-compliant cars. It's made no difference whatsoever.
What's the sort of impact it's having on people that you speak to?
I know that people that live in a very small village that has one pub and one shop, that neighbours me, so that's a 2-minute drive, surrounded by countryside. They actually sit out just outside the border. So we're just inside Biggin Hill, they're just outside, they come under Surrey. There's people that will no longer come into Biggin Hill anymore, and they haven't done since ULEZ came into effect. So it has affected business, definitely, for Biggin Hill. I think we'll end up losing Biggin Hill at some point, because people are not going to come in, especially here, where we are in Oxted. They have a train station, they have free parking. There's a big car park at the back, 2 hours free parking. I don't know if you've done any footage, but this is just one high street out of 2. They have good public transport, even though they come under Surrey, and they're not in the ULEZ zone, and they're not under TfL. And there's obviously 2 or 3 supermarkets, one large supermarket, Morrison's. So they don't need to come up through Biggin Hill anymore. They can just go south. They don't need to come into the ULEZ zone at all. And people don't now. A lot of people don't.
What do you make of the fact that there's a lot of people who have not paid their fines?
What do I make of it?
Are you surprised? I mean, what's your view on that?
No, I'm not surprised, because it's a tax. But then I would now argue, is it a tax? Because there's been documentation recently that's just come out of TfL for all the embassies that have not paid this tax, and it actually says it's a service charge. So if it's a service charge, does that mean we have the choice whether we want that service or not, and whether we choose to pay it or not? So there's an argument there. Also, there was a consultation, was there not? And the majority of people voted against it. He said he would go with what the people said, obviously he's a big car, and he went against the people. So am I surprised that people aren't paying the fines? No. Do I believe that the way they're going about these fines is probably unlawful? Yes, because people aren't getting the fine. You have 3 days to pay, which not everyone knows that. The signage is illegal as well. That's already been debated and proven, but nothing's been done about that. It doesn't say there's a charge or what that charge is, so people don't necessarily know, especially if you don't live anywhere in London. So if you're travelling in somewhere to where I live, you're not going to know. So you get 3 days to pay, and a lot of people don't receive the first or second fine. And I can testify to that on the congestion charge because I didn't receive the first or second fine until I had the one that was at £282. And then you can't even do a statutory declaration on that. You have to wait until the order of recovery report off before you can do a statutory declaration and send it back to the original fine. So I think people aren't receiving the first fines in the first place, and then you've got to £300 and you're thinking, how do I pay £300? And what happens here as well, being on the outskirts of the M25 as well, that if there's any diversion or there's an accident, people are now inadvertently going into the ULEZ for 30 seconds and they're getting caught by a camera when they wouldn't have come into the ULEZ zone in the first place. So I don't, the argument is no one's contesting the ULEZ and the LEZ that came to the South Circular, but places that sit on those boundaries that are on the countryside, it doesn't warrant having this charge basically, and people can't afford it.
I was going to say, yeah. Now, is there anything else you want to add? I think we've got plenty there.
Could you just touch on, because of the sun, that bit with the ULEZ being so close to the boundary?
I've just got off the phone with Rachel.
Yeah?
What, here?
Yeah, you, just on the back end of what you just said. You said something about
people might have to go into it for, for various reasons for 30 seconds.
It just, sun just suddenly.
So you just sum up to me like...
Well, but say for example, Biggin Hill, we are surrounded by countryside, So apart from one main road, if you want to call it that obviously goes north further into the ULEZ, everywhere surrounding us is mainly country lanes. So for me to travel down here, I've had to go through country lanes. There is no direct bus route, and we don't have all the amenities, we don't have the public transport. Yet here in Oxted, it's a much busier town. If you're going to warrant a congestion charging zone, to be fair, if I'm going to go that far down the line, it would be here, because there's a lot more vehicles, there's a lot more shops, and they actually have better public transport because they have a train station. The amenities are here, but a lot of places that do sit on that boundary, like Biggin Hill, don't have the amenities on their doorstep. So people are now not travelling in, and it's the same all the way around. Like you said, Swanley, Dartford sits half in, half out, and you've got Blue Water. People aren't going to travel in, so businesses, as time goes on, there are going to be a lot of businesses that won't be able to survive.
And when you speak to people, that's probably the clip I'm going to use, but when you speak to people, how do people feel about it who reach out to you?
Very stressed, because normally they've got...
Do you actually mind saying people are very stressed?
Low on the mic.
People are very stressed. They feel that it's unjust and unfair, especially when people look into it quite deeply and find that air quality isn't changing at all. So it's not doing anything to the air quality, and air doesn't just stay within the ULEZ zone. The air moves freely all the time. So the people that do still have non-compliant vehicles, and there are many, that 10% is just not true. They're struggling, they're worrying, especially obviously the people that have set up auto pay. They're being charged daily, they can't afford it. It's putting a massive financial strain on those people. I have a compliant card, but we know that pay per mile will come in, and even if it's £1 per mile, but it's come from the GLA that possibly up to £2 per mile, in reality, who is actually going to afford that? Not many people. It's going to destroy a lot of lives. So people are worried, scared, stressed and angry.